Bonus episode, everybody. We got the Casco Bay course preview for this year's Casco Bay on July 9th in Portland, Maine. We'll see you there. Let's jump right in. Welcome to the Löw Tide Böyz, a Swimrun Podcast. I'm Chip.
And I'm Chris, and we've got some bonus episode action for you. Bonus! Ödyssey Swimrun Casco Bay is coming up in a few weeks, and we wanted to share a bonus episode that had all the latest information about the 2023 edition. Now, as some of you may know, Casco Bay courses typically change every year or so. But this year's long course and short course will be the same as 2022. As such, we will be resharing our conversation with frequent guest of the show, John Stevens, to walk us through the courses. So if you heard last year's addendum bonus episode, all the course preview information will be the same.
Yes, but John Stevens has won Casco Bay at least twice. At least. Designed the course for all the years with Lars. Lives there. Lives on one of the islands, so the man knows what he's talking about when it comes to all things Casco Bay. The boys, the Löw Tide Böyz, Chris and Chip, us, will be there. We're returning for our fourth
time.
Our fourth trip to Casco
Amazing.
Bay Swimrun. So excited for that. So if you are wanting to consume all the Casco Bay content, and if this is your first time racing, we have lots of other Casco Bay content that you should check out. So we have our course preview episode from last year, which is basically this one, as Chris alluded to. It gives you all the details about Portland, Maine, and the mechanics of the race. We also have our race reports from 2021 and 2022 race reports to get more intel on the race. I believe we also have
the
a throwback to the 2018 when we pre-Löw Tide Böyz.
Yeah.
Rustle that one up. Listen to that one. That is probably a real treat to listen to there. So plenty of Casco Bay related content. Be sure to check that out if you want to go deep on Casco Bay.
And if it's really your first time racing and you're nervous about it, which is a totally understandable thing, if you're like me, sometimes just assuming a lot of podcast content, a lot of information about it can help. So the more familiar you are, like with anything, we recommend looking at the course map when you're listening to the leg-by-leg breakdowns and things like that, and just help orient yourself, look at photos. All these things can help you be as prepared as you can be for that race.
Yeah, absolutely. And just what Chris said, they have a Google interactive map, and they have like a PDF map. So we'll literally pull that up and we'll listen to the leg by leg, and we'll kind of talk through a little bit of our strategy. Maybe that's a good time to mark up the distances on your paddles. And it also just gets one more layer of memorization or whatever technique you're using to try to familiarize yourself with the course. But like we said, we're going to be there, and we have a triple threat of Löw Tide Böyz themed meetups this year. As you may have noticed, this is one of our favorite races in the United States, so we bring a lot of heat. So to start things off in the morning, we're actually hosting a Patreon brunch. So if you're in our Patreon club or maybe an aspiring Patreon member, we're meeting at 10 a.m. near the ferry terminal. We're going to do some fika, Portland, Maine style.
Yeah.
And then a few hours after that, once your apple fritters and your cinnabulers have digested, we're going to go head on over to East Beach, where Onville Coaching, Nicholas Ramirez from Onville Coaching, and a lot of other swim runners, they'll be in town, and they're hosting a shakeout clinic and swim run at noon on Saturday, July 8th. So this is the day before the race. You go out there. Nicholas Ramirez is one of the most highly decorated most experienced swimrun coaches there is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Make sure you got your ear tuned.
You have questions about gear. Again, if this is your first time, these shakeouts are invaluable. Kind of sets the mood and expectation for the whole weekend. You get your questions answered by super experienced swim runners. Everyone's super friendly and helpful. I also think it just helps set the vibe as well.
It does lock in the vibe for the weekend, which is going to be great. And if you're like fiddling, how do I do my buoy and get it behind my back, or how does the tether work? These are things that Marcus Barton will be happy to answer for you. So bring those questions to him and Onville Coaching. We will also be there shaking it out, a little swim, little run action there. Now, Sunday, July 9th, we'll see you all on the ferry heading over to the islands. But after, we're going to be hosting our, I can't even believe I'm saying this, third annual post-race party at 6 p.m. at the Brickyard Hollow, located at 9 Commercial Street. Again, this is very close to the ferry terminal. So wherever you're going to get ferry in the morning, that's where you're going to meet for the fika brunch with the boys. That's where the brewery situation is going to be post-race, and you also want to head that way for the shakeout with the Envol coaching.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
So we'll see you there.
It'll be fun. Yeah, and new for this year, we have some real heavy hitters. So as mentioned, Nicholas Ramirez is going to be in town from Sweden, but also Max and Hugo, reigning world champion men's team. They're gonna be in town, so that's gonna be awesome. So we're gonna try to meet up with them and see if we can get them to maybe do like a meet and greet or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll ask them.
That would be. I think this is the first time we've ever had swimrun world champions racing a U.S. race. I can't think of another time.
That wasn't an Attila race.
That wasn't an Attila race. That's a good point.
Yeah, and this is something listeners of the show will remember that as early as December, I was like, let's get these folks to Casco. Let's showcase the best. So I think this is going to be really great for the sport. I think it's going to be great for the sport in the U.S. I think Max and Hugo are amazing ambassadors for the sport, and I'm super stoked that they're coming out and just, really just appreciate them wanting to do it.
I can't wait to see a little European flair on Vail Island.
Course record
that's
getting
what I
dropped
see. Oh, yeah.
by a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of courses, Ödyssey Casco Bay has a short course and a long course. Now, Chris said the course is the same as last year, but last year sometimes we have great ideas. And this, I think we're gonna count this one as one of them. We did a episode called Couch to Casco, in tongue in cheek to the Couch to 5K situation. Also, this was with John Stevens as well, where we discuss everything you need to know about the short course, also with training and gear tips thrown in. So if you have questions about some gear, you always can slide into the DMs, of course.
Of course.
But check it out on this episode as well. So if you're really specific on the short course and you don't even want to have your mind contaminated with any long course information, check out the Couch to Casco there.
Yeah, and then for the long course, as we mentioned at the beginning, it's the same course as last year, which is going to clock in at 23-ish miles with about 18 miles of running and about 5 miles of swimming, over 13 run sections and 12 swim sections. I thought last year's course or this year's course was really great. Where it ended was great. It was easy to go get ice cream afterwards if you want, or catch the ferry or whatever. So John came on the show last year and did a leg-by-leg breakdown, but because it's the same one, we're just going to repeat that for folks. And as we mentioned as well, bring up the course map, orient yourself while you're listening to the leg-by-leg breakdown. It'll really help you on race day because you'll just remember a bunch of stuff. And yeah, John's awesome. So
yeah, and
thanks again, John.
Of course, having done this race last year, there was no wrinkles to what is proposed. It's as advertised there. So there you go. Well, that'll do it for us. We'll kick it on over to John Stevens, Ödyssey race director of Casco Bay, for the Casco Bay Course Preview 2023. See you out there.
All right, so this year's long course Casco Bay route starts on Shabig Island, which is actually the start line from year one. And so we'll be right on the end of the Shabig Island wharf, Shabig Island Pier, and starting right there and kicking right off. So off the ferry, onto the dock, right into the first run. And a lot of this is going to seem familiar if anyone's done Shabig in the past few years. You're going to find that the course meets up with where we've been in the past few years pretty quickly, in particularly into last year and the year before. Last year, right into kind of what was actually the second to last run, last swim, and last run into the finish line. But we're going to find ourselves kind of very quickly following the road on Shabig, down onto the beach, and into a very quick cove swim. And this is what was the final swim last year. Across this very tiny little cove. It's about 500 yards across over to this little beach. And then it's going to be a beach run rock hopping into sand, into what was the finish line last year at Shabig Island Boatyard. This year it's a beach run. We're going to run through the boatyard, kind of cut through, up over onto the road, and then we're going to find our way back onto the trails. And we did hit some of these trails last year, but now we're kind of going in a reverse direction. So we're going to kind of reverse direction some of these trails through Shabig Island, coming out eventually on the point, which is the sandbar over to Little Shabig. And we're going to, I think this year, given the tide and where it's at, it's probably going to be one of those years where it's either a knee-deep wade, knee to waist-deep wade, or a little bit of a swim. But again, the tide's going to be incoming. So it's going to be pretty intense across the sandbar from Big Shabig to Little Shabig. So it's one of those years, if you're swimming, you're going to find yourself getting kind of ripped in the current a little bit. You might be able to wade most of that, but it's going to be a little bit of a battle across that sandbar this year over to Little Shabig. But once you get there, we have that little bit of a half-mile swim, and then we have that tricky swim over to Long Island. And again, this is a very current-heavy swim. So at this point, it's going to be an outgoing tide. So I apologize. So on the sandbar, it's actually going to be sweeping you out a little bit as well. And then so this one is going to be sweeping you. If you're swimming across to Long Island outgoing, it's going to be pushing you from right to left. And that tide can be pretty tricky. So that's one of those ones where it's going to be heads up swimming, watching the buoys, watching the boats on the other side and the anchorage, seeing which direction they're pointed in. So you're knowing which way to aim your swim. And you are going to have to play to the current on this one. Now with this, you can run down the beach pretty much as far as you want. It's going to be a straight shot across, but really watch that current to see which way it's going to be pushing you. And then it seems like a short swim across, but with the current over long, it's going to be a little bit seem longer than it is. But you'll exit onto Long Island. And now again, we're moving in reverse direction than we have in the past few years. So we're going to kind of go up the road on Long Island into the trails of what we call the Black Forest, and that Black Forest Trail. So some single track through there, a little bit of elevation gain, single track trail, a lot of fun to kind of bushwhack through that, back onto the roads. And then you find your way eventually through an aid station out onto what we call the Nubble, which is a house on a point, which kind of looks like a lighthouse. And it's going to be a rocky entry into a swim. And this is about a 1,300-yard swim from what we call the Nubble across the backside of Long Island here, across Shark Cove, over to a little bit of a spit of sand. And this is one of those deceivingly long swims. It's about 1,300 yards, and it's one of those where you're going to get about 600 yards into it, and you're going to be like, wait, shouldn't I be there by now? It keeps going. So be prepared for that swim because it's longer than it seems. And what's even going to make it longer is when you actually do finish that swim, you hop out on a little spit of sand, and you're probably out of the water for about 15 seconds, and then you're back into the water. So then, again, you go through this about 1,300-yard swim, right back in, and then you've got about a 300-yard swim right after that. So it's very quick. I mean, you don't even have time to take your goggles off. That swim over is to Vail Island. And so that one is not super long. You're not going to find a lot of current on that. It's going to be pretty direct, but getting out on Vail is going to be tricky. Tide's going to be low. It's going to be slippery. There's going to be rocks. And now we're on Vail. Vail is all rocks. This is just a half mile of billy goat rock jumping across this island. So really watch your footing, watch what you're doing. Vail is, as we say, you're not going to win the race on Vail, but you can lose the race on Vail. This is where you're going to slip and twist an ankle or hurt yourself. So be careful kind of coming across this and rock jumping. And again, now we're reverse direction from the past few years, same direction as the first few years. So if you're a real veteran, this is going to seem familiar to you. But you're going to make your way around about a half mile around Vail. Don't cut through, lots of poison ivy, but make your way around it. And then you're going to have a short swim back over to the beach onto Long Island. From there, you're going to get out. You're going to have a little bit of an unexpected hill climbing out of that after that swim. It's going to feel steeper than it should, just given what you've been through on Vail. But plow through that, some road running across Long Island, and then we're going to get into one of the longer swims of the day. And again, this was a swim we introduced 2 years ago, or I guess at this point 3 years ago, but 2 races ago. And we had done it in reverse from Cow Island to Long. And this year, we're going from Long Island to Cow. And this is the longest swim of the day. So after that long swim, you're going to come across onto Cow Island, which is really cool. There's a nice old fort there. There's the summer camp there that they've got running. But a good opportunity, again, to come off of that long swim and give your arms a bit of a rest. But with that, you've got some single track trail running through Cow. And again, that's going to be kind of some heads up running through that. On the backside of Cow, you're going to have a pretty quick swim. It's about maybe 200 yards. So you're off of Cow, right back into the water. Quick swim over to what we call Diamond Cove on Great Diamond. And again, now we're still following pretty much the reverse course of what we've done in the past few years. And so on to Great Diamond, dirt road running through Diamond Cove onto Great Diamond all the way across. And this is where the race gets different than anything actually we've ever done before, which is kind of unique and pretty cool. So this time your long course is going to meet up with short course, and we're going to head over to the Great Diamond Island Pier. And about this point, it should be right around, for most people, right around low tide. And so with that, we're going to be right off the Great Diamond Island dock. And so once again, we've got a pier jump. And so with that, it'll be maybe, if you go off the end, about 20 feet, 25 feet down of a jump from the top of the pier. If anyone is not up for that, there's a small little ramp, which will drop you down about 5 to 10 feet. And then beyond that, there is a ramp down to a float where you can just kind of hop in about 1 foot into the water. But from there, we go off the Great Diamond Pier into a swim over to Peaks Island. And again, this is a new swim entry, new swim exit for us, which we're pretty excited about. I think it's going to be pretty cool. But we go right across the channel there and come out on what was called Trefetherin Landing. And so come up on a boat ramp onto Peaks. And from there, it's going to be, again, a little bit of a new run to the backside of the island on some paved road. And then, again, meet up with some familiar course that we've done before in previous years. But paved road for a little bit on the backside, which is super scenic. Waves crashing right there on the shore road. And then there's going to be a hard right-hand turn, basically right into the woods, right into the trails. And this is going to be some tricky trail running. In years past, we've had people, myself included, get lost on these trails and mixed up a little bit back in there. So this is definitely heads up racing. Really keep your eyes open for the flags along the way and see what's coming, and make sure you don't get too lost in there. But, single track trail, that's going to be, again, not known trail. So really keep your eye open for the flags. Through until we eventually make our way to Battery Steel, which again is a familiar site from the past few years. We always kind of tend to pass through here, but through Battery Steel, which is a fort on the backside of the island, out through the trails onto to the road on the backside. And we're going to follow that paved road around the bend and right into Torrington Point, which is going to be the swim over to Cushing Island. And at this point, the tide should be incoming, so that tide's going to be pushing you from left to right. So really kind of keep an eye on what's happening with that swim over there. That's going to be a very tide affected swim over to Cushing. And again, it's one of those where on paper it doesn't seem too long, but with the tides really moving you, and at this point in the race, if you're long course, you're pretty tired. You've kind of made your way through it. So really be hyper aware of what's happening with the current on that. Watch the buoys, aim and swim accordingly with what you kind of see happening there with that. And then we ended up on Cushing. And again, this is a familiar run. Same direction we've done actually the past few years on Cushing. Dirt road, some trail, a little bit of everything through the fort back there. Pretty scenic, really, really cool run. About a mile on Cushing. And then we get into the second to last swim over to House Island. And again, it's one of those swims that if you look at it on paper, it doesn't seem too crazy, but you get into it, and that's a long swim. It's about 1,000 yards or so. And again, you're going to be fighting a little bit of current on that. You're going to have to aim as to where you're going, but you're going to take that swim straight over to House Island and run through the fort there, which again is really cool situation to see. And you go through the fort and the yurts and the tents they've built there. And if anyone's looking for a place to stay, check out Fortland, Fortland. A really cool place if you want to find something a little more rustic, but running right through the campground, right through the fort on that island. Again, it's not going to be a super long run. Grassy trails on that one through, and that takes you to the last swim, straight across the peaks. And at this point, it doesn't matter what the map says. That's the last swim. It's going to be the longest swim of the day because you just got to get it done. But you're going to be swimming right across the peaks to the beach, coming out on the beach. And from that point, there's a little bit of a grassy climb there. And there's some kind of wooden beams put in. I don't want to call it a staircase, but I will call it a climb up this grassy hill. And there's nothing worse than finishing that last swim than having to climb up on these kind of uneven steps, climb up to the finish line. But when you do get there, that's it. It's over. It's done. The beer and the water and the food are all waiting for you, and the course is over.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a rating or review, since that's the best way to help other people discover the show and the sport of swim run.
Check out our website, lowtideboys.com. That's boys with a Z, for swimrun resources, including gear guides, tips, how-to videos, and so much more. Make sure to check out our meme page at The Löw Tide Böyz on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, send us a DM or email us at lowtideboys@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Riding Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swim run and other activities.
Lots of activities.
Lots of activities.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
Then a run.
And then a swim.
Then another run.
Then another swim.
Then run some more.
Just keep going.
Let's go.
And then stop at some point because,
And fuel. Don't forget to fuel.
Gotta fuel too.
Of course, yes.